Good day, and welcome to another episode of Agent X11 Hollywood Dark Journalist. Another light in this darkened world. I am your host, Penny L.A. Shepherd, and I am Agent X11. My co-hosts are David Zublik, Heather Day, Joan Rene, Chris Montgomery, Skip Press, Tom Althouse, Yessica Garza, Edward Medallion, Dr. Keith Abloh, and TJ Ward.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are tonight's entertainment.
Agent X11 Hollywood Dark Journalist begins now. And welcome to another episode of Agent X11 Hollywood Dark Journalist. My name is Penny L.A. Shepherd, and I am Agent X11. I'm joined by my co-host Joan Rene and by a new individual who will be joining us in the subsequent weeks. He's a researcher. His name is Josh. He goes by Josh Urban. He has collected a great deal of information, has been researching for quite some time, and we have a switch out. So we have, at the last moment, I said, hey, Josh, what are you doing right now? And so I thank you very much for being available. Normally we have Skip Press at this time. He's doing America's Golden Eon, AGE, but his Wi-Fi went down at the last moment. So we're switching him out for hopefully his Wi-Fi comes up. If not, Josh is going to be joining us on our evening show as well, because he has a plethora of information anyway. But today we'll be talking about Armageddon programming, all this in preparation for a coming day or event when they intend on triggering all the school shooter incels at once. Will that event be the assassination of Trump? Armageddon on their terms. Josh, welcome to Agent X11 Hollywood Dark Journalist.
Glad to be here. Thank you. I'm happy to be here anytime you guys want me here.
You are an interesting individual. Why did you start researching in the first place, and when did you start researching?
It's been probably about 2 years now that I've been researching in depth. I started researching probably hard. So just hearing these claims and then learning they were real. Once you learn that they're real and you have enough evidence to say, yeah, these are legitimate, they're grounded in reality.
Is that why you started researching? Because you were like, I don't know, is this real or is this not? And then when you found out they were, you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, once you find out that it is real, I mean, in my opinion, I think any sane person would want to aid the problem. You know, you at least want people to notice this is going on. I am not sure how much I alone can do to solve the problem, but I want to wake people up to the problem.
Yes.
I think solving the problem is going to require a big group effort. But
Were you ever a conspiratorial individual before, 2 years before?
um, probably a little bit, yeah. I mean, I take that George Carlin used to say, whenever interests converge or align, you don't need a conspiracy theory, because whenever you and I both have skin in the game, if you and I are both drug dealers, well, then
Right.
we both have the same skin in the game, and so we're essentially got the same interests. We're bound to kind of cover for each other, because if one of us goes down, we're both in the same boat.
True, very
So,
true. I was never a conspiratorial individual. I was a singer. I was involved in the entertainment industry for over 55 years. Uh, I did watch the X-Files when I had an opportunity, but I remember asking my husband, Sam, who has since transpired and not on this earthly plane, why do you look like David Duchovny and why does Gillian Anderson look like me? That was the substance of my, X-Files kind of conspiratorial bent. So I've been researching since 2000, I believe, 15, when I
right.
left my husband and I prayed and asked God to reveal myself to me. And then I found out I was involved in the MK Ultra project. So that was my vestment.
Yeah. Well, another thing that I've learned more recently, this is something that I've come to learn very recently, is that, and especially in your case, you can probably attest to this. These things are kind of much more hide in plain sight. They happen kind of without you knowing they're happening. Everything seems normal, but there's a very thin layer. And once you start to peel back that initial layer, you start to see all kinds of things behind there that don't make sense. But on the surface level, like you said, you're living a semi-normal life, and you're asking these questions and you can't figure it out, and then you pray about it, and then that peels back the first layer, and then all of a sudden everything starts to reveal itself, and all these holes, you're finding holes in all the stories that like you said, people know each other, and how did you know this person, and why do you guys know each other? And that's all hidden very subtly. You wouldn't know unless you start to peel back the first layer or look behind the curtain.
Right. Now, what would you like to talk about today? Because we said you're going to talk about the Armageddon
Yeah.
programming. Where shall we begin in this?
Well, the best way that I can start us off here is this idea that the younger generation, specifically, I'm 25. The people around my age, they're growing much more. In my opinion, I'll just come out and say it: sociopathic, psychopath.
Yes.
Less.
I have a little qualm with the word sociopath because I personally believe that it was engendered. The DSM was actually created under the American Psychological Association, in which Donald Ewing Cameron was the head of that
Mm,
association, and
that's
he
interesting.
he erased people at the Allen Memorial Institute under MK Ultra. So I have kind of a bit of a problem with that. But
We'll say
when
less
they
empathy.
had created the term psychopath, uh, then they came out with the movie Psycho in the 50s. That's when they changed the DSM. They changed the
Mm,
DSM to reflect that because a psychopath, you cannot fix a psychopath. So there's really no billable hours for a psychopath because you can't
yeah,
fix them.
yeah,
But a sociopath, you can fix a sociopath with different medications, and of course, they all have the narcissistic implications regarding their
yeah.
diagnoses. But
Mhm.
according to the DSM, hey, you can bill for a sociopath.
Yeah, the crossover between both of those is just a lack of empathy. Uh, um,
Mhm.
a person who doesn't have the ability, they don't possess empathy. And so, to begin with this Armageddon programming idea, there's a couple things that we're seeing in the world. For instance, ever since Donald Trump came on the scene, and let's just leave the left versus right out of it, it has been polarizing. We've been sucked into what's called a dialectic, and he is either the most loved figure or the most hated figure, and there's
Right.
no in between ever. And I don't believe, and again, I'm young, but I have studied my fair amount of history. I don't think there's ever been a figure, especially in American politics, that's been on this level of polarization. And so that is being fed there. If that's a fire, there's somebody's dumping wood and coal on that fire, making it bigger. It seems like there's no attempt to bring us back together at all.
Right.
It's like we're speeding towards the edge of a cliff.
Now, this
And
Armageddon programming, is this MK Ultra programming?
it's a form of it, of course. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. MK Ultra. So MK Ultra, in my terms, would hinge on the trauma-based programming. It's Pavlovian conditioning paired with trauma. Anything can be learned. Human nature is programmable to a certain extent. Pavlov and his dog. He would give his dog food and ring a bell. Give his dog food and ring a bell. And after he did this enough time, the dog would learn to associate that
Right. It
sound.
would salivate at the sound of the bell.
Indeed. And so all trauma-based mind control is, at its core layer, is taking trauma and using that as that bell and food. It's just a very evil form of that. And we're going to get into where that came from.
Okay.
It is MK Ultra kind of blended with communism, because we've got two communist Frankfurt School theorists that came up with these theories.
Would you say that the Harris campaign and the Biden campaign is primarily, that's what they were doing? They were doing Marxism and MK Ultra on the society?
I would say, so in the terms of Marxism, they probably did lean more to the Marxist angle. However, I will say that in a couple of ways, the right does lean towards that big government, that revolving door, that idea that the private sector should be entwined with the government. And we see that. We see people, oil executives, banking executives being brought in to manage these institutions. So really, we're getting a government filled with crony capitalists either way. But what we're going to go over is we're going to go over 8 steps of professional hypnosis.
Oh,
and
okay.
Yeah, and you're going to see that these are very close to what both campaigns have been doing.
Does hypnosis also involve neuro-linguistic programming?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, because that's one of the most potent forms of
Absolutely.
hypnosis that there is. I know, because my husband was a psychologist major. He practiced as a counselor, but he ran his parents' marriage family crisis counseling office, and they were PhDs adept at NLP. Shall I bring in your synopsis on the?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. So I put together this. It's not too long, and I'll kind of fill in the blanks with my own commentary. So really, this starts out with a interview by a guy named Roger Morneau, and he said that when he became entwined with people who were occultists, they were doing seances, talking to spirits. He said that there were allegedly 3 goals that were established in the 1700s to restore Satanism to the world, to prepare for the coming millennia. And the first one was the greatest trick the devil ever pulled. That was convincing the world that Satan and the fallen angels never have existed. They've never existed. They're not real. They're imaginary. They're fairy tales. That was the first objective. The second objective was to bring hypnosis out from the occult, the hidden realm, out into the open, as a form of thought control, as a form of mind control. That first began with Franz Mesmer as mesmerism.
Yes.
And today that's manifested into Hollywood, with Hollywood spell casting, musical hypnosis. Most people have this image in their mind of, a guy with a pocket watch. That's not quite what I mean when I'm talking about hypnosis. When you listen to a song, when you watch a movie, you kind of place yourself subconsciously into the shoes of that experience. So if you're watching a movie, you don't have to consciously know you're doing it, but you kind of are in the main character's shoes. That is a protagonist. You kind of put yourself in the shoes of the protagonist. And that's what is meant by hypnosis. Because when you immerse yourself into a story, that's the direct route to the subconscious mind. When we say, let's play pretend for a minute. None of this is real. We're just playing pretend. That kind of suspends disbelief. That's the term for it. Suspension of disbelief. It's like, the story's not real, but you kind of play pretend just because you want to be entertained.
Right.
And that's where hypnosis begins. And as we'll come to see, that's the baiting and the hooking. That's the first.
I mean,
two
that's what
steps.
Hitler used. Hitler used neurolinguistic programming language. So did many of the major mega pastors. They use it as well.
Every single one of these control structures hinges on some form of it, because to put it plainly, you need to sprinkle enough sugar on top of the crap
Right.
to make it go down.
Make it palatable crap.
Yes,
and then serve it up in Bill Gates, patties.
Yes,
that's what my grandmother used to say all the time: is you can't put enough sugar on, you know what, to make it smell good.
Yeah, a spoonful of sugar makes the crap go down.
Hello there.
Hi, Jessica. Jessica,
Hi.
how are you?
Good.
So the third objective was probably the most insidious, and it was to destroy the Bible without burning it. And one person was to be chosen to be, quote unquote, tutored by Satan personally, and that was Charles Darwin with Darwinism. And I have three small sections here: mechanism, execution, outcome. So the mechanism, destroying the Bible without burning it, implies undermining its authority indirectly through reinterpretation, doubt, or replacement rather than physical destruction. So Charles Darwin, who was born 1809, is cast as Satan's protege, crafting a narrative to supplant biblical creation with natural selection. What I like to remind people is that the goal here was not to say this is right and that's wrong. It was to be raised to the equivalent of the other, in so much that I could choose the Bible or I could choose Darwinism, but I can't choose both. Because if I choose Darwinism, then I have to reconcile with the fact that I'm an animal that has no soul and the strong survive. So at the end of the day, if that person has to suffer or go hungry on the streets, or if that old lady is dumb enough to fall for the gift card scam,
right,
it's her fault, and I'm, the strong have to survive, and I have a family to feed. That's Darwinism. And so I posit that Darwinism is the ultimate form of quote unquote Satanism.
Ooh.
I kind of agree, because Darwinism is evolution, right?
Well, there's evolution, yes, and then there's survival of the fittest, which are very similar, but I would draw a fine line in between them. I do believe to a degree that you have animals that produce offspring, and some of them do better than others, and so stronger offspring does kind of come. But there was a scientist in Russia. His name was Pyotr Kropotkin. And he did a lot of studying similar to Charles Darwin. What he found was that there was a lot of cooperation in the animal kingdom. I wish I would have included a little bit more on that. But he found out that in the animal kingdom, there was a lot of cooperation between different flocks and even different species, in which they would cooperate in their ecosystem to ensure that their ecosystem thrives. So there is a mix of both when it comes to evolution. But what happens is this idea that we can apply Darwinism and survival of the fittest to the human world, and that's called social Darwinism.
My question in regards to the actual Big Bang theory as opposed to evolution is, if we evolved from apes, why are there still apes?
I've heard that question a lot. I don't know where to answer it either. That's a great question.
No one knows where to answer.
One of the things is that came up, and it seems like Darwinism really was the ultimate MK Ultra, because so many people accepted it, and yet there was no evidence that one single species evolved into another ever.
Exactly.
And so without that evidence, we still accepted it. But I do believe what they did was they put it in the textbooks. They didn't allow anyone to teach creationism.
Exactly.
And then they repeated it over and over and over again, which is as one of the hallmarks of MK Ultra, because after you hear it so many times, you accept it as fact.
Repetition is the most basic form of mind control. That's a saying that I like. Another saying that I like, and I'll say this because I think you guys will like it. The worst hypnotist is nothing more than a liar who's attempting to convince you of a mythology that is intended to become your new normal. So the worst hypnotist is a liar who's just trying to convince you of a story. They're trying to get you to play along with the story, and that is intended to become normal. So, for instance, if you and your significant other always have the same feud, or let's say you're a female and your husband continually, or your boyfriend continually cheats on you.
Yes.
He tries to convince you of the story that this time was the last time.
Right.
I'm not going to do it. That's a mythology. Yeah. That's a story. That's a load of crap. But he wants you to believe that that's normal. It's okay. It's
been there, done that.
And like you said, Joan, you said you keep doing it over and over and over, and it.
That's what my brother David said, because one of my handlers, who was my agent, he also sold used cars, and my brother David said, right? My brother David said, didn't you buy that used car like 5 times, and then each time he comes back, and you're like, I'll buy that used car.
Yeah. No, I mean that it's funny you brought that up, and because at the end of the day,
buy it again.
These people who are masters at this, they are used car salesman types.
Yes.
They and this kind of bleeds over, but a quote unquote spell, magic spell, is manipulation of language with like doublespeak. You're using doublespeak, you're using jargon, you're using language that has double meanings that the other person might not understand. A lawyer is good at this. Contractual law, banking law is good at this. The second part, as you said, repetition and circular reasoning. Circular reasoning, the harder you work, the higher your taxes. The higher your taxes, the harder you work. That's circular reasoning. It just goes and spirals in on itself. So you're caught in a loop. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That paired with repetition and circular reasoning. And the final part that comprises a mythological spell would be reinforcement with just enough partial real world truth to make the medicine go down.
Right.
And that is how
sugar makes the medicine go down.
Do you have an example of that would help the audience and me maybe a little bit?
So let's see. Everybody wants to be a good person by accepting the transgender ideology, and everybody wants to be a good person by accepting the painting the streets with rainbow flags, putting up all this, this has gone way beyond just, okay, you have your orientation, let's just get along. No, it's like you want to be a nice person. You want to be accepting. That's the truth. The truth is you want to be a good person.
Yes.
And so the mythology is that you're being a good person by letting them take over a whole town and turn it into this paradise with rainbow flags on the streets, tearing down the statues of people. And then they go and they put up a statue of a Satanist idol in the city hall. That's how this works. Armageddon programming is also, it relies on this spell example. The spell is, let's see, you need subtext in the mind. So for instance, innuendo.
Yes.
If I use innuendo,
like Comey did with his 8647. Innuendo with the shells on the beach, but just a blatant lie.
And then plausible denial.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's the subtext that plays in the mind. That's the goal.
Yes. So that would be the MK Ultra flag for those that it's a triggering event through the 8647. And it's a presentation, a public presentation, which he retracts it, but it doesn't matter because it's now out there for anybody that is an MK Ultra assassin, or has a predilection or hatred for the president, because that's what we're talking about. We're also talking about what event will be the assassination of Trump. They already tried to kill him several times. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but well, I mean, I know you know that I'm the actual 11 in Stranger Things, but
Yeah.
when I went, God basically told me to go to Branson. I went there twice, and this one time that I was there, I was having visions, and I was seeing events. I went up to a place called Prayer Mountain, and Prayer Mountain, I was told to go there at like 2 in the morning. I went there 3 times, but I actually saw what the plans were for the world. And so there was a dog there, it's a shepherd. It was a shepherd. And I didn't know the shepherd's name, but I found out later the third time I went there, the shepherd's name was Scout. And
Interesting.
so I went up there at like 3, 4 in the morning, finally got there. On my way up there, I my GPS stopped working, and I was like, oh my God, it's dark, it's foggy, there's no other cars on this road. I said, God, if you want me to go up there, you're gonna have to send a sign. So I pulled over by like Walden's Pond, I kid you not, and I put my feet up in the truck, and I went, I'm gonna take a nap because there's no way I'm gonna be able to get up there until it's daytime.
Right.
Well, a truck came down the road. No cars had been on this road. It's a disparate road, and it had a blinking American flag.
Huh.
It was like a beacon of light, blinking, blinking, blaring. And I was like, okay, I guess that's a sign.
Yeah.
So I followed it. I followed it up to the mountain, and it turned off right at Prayer Mountain.
Mm.
So I went in. I knocked on the door. No one was there. There was a shepherd there. I talked to the shepherd. It was a girl. I said, where should I go and pray? The shepherd looked at me and walked in the middle of the field and rolled over. And I tell a joke. I say, I was wearing a fake fur coat. She had a real fur coat. And I wept all over her for about 20 minutes because I saw World War III. I saw a civil war. And I prayed for the world, for our nation, and for our president, who at that time was President Trump.
Yeah.
These events I saw. I also saw Trump get shot, but he was fine. He got shot, and he was fine like the next day.
Yeah.
He was fine. Everyone was like shocked that he was fine. I saw a bunch of other things, but in that particular thing, when I moved from where I was in Atlanta, Texas, and I moved to a region surrounding Atlanta, Georgia, and drove through a hurricane, which is weird. I set my gear up in the living room, and this was in July. I moved into the space that I'm in now, July 13th. July 13th, that vision that I saw in 2017 happened. Trump was shot, but he was okay. He was shot at, hit him in the air, but he was okay. Later on, I found out that my husband, Steve, I already knew he died, a couple of days after he told me that my agent was my brother, but he died on July 13th in 2017.
Wow.
So these are weird events, right? But I know that I was involved in MK Ultra projects, which is then I start researching MK Ultra, its implications, the Armageddon program, because when I went online, I tell you, part of the Armageddon program was also that, and this was it was an actual op. There were many ops under the Armageddon programming. And when I went on X, I started with there will be gnashing of teeth. And I started with that, with the religious aspect of the Armageddon programming. So tell us a little bit more about what you know of, because on your text to me, you said Armageddon programming, all this in preparation for a coming day or event when they intend on triggering all the school shooters incels at once, because I believe that that's what Comey did with his 8647. He's trying to trigger some incels, and then he takes it down. It doesn't matter whether he takes it down or not. The damage is done. Your thoughts?
So if you could go ahead and bring my screen up, I want to go ahead and just start on this 8-step of hypnosis, because this is very important. This is the process. This is the professional steps to hypnosis. And I've also got a couple of my notes from some quotes from the podcast, Masters Mayon podcast, that I'll supplement these with. The first and second steps. The first step is baiting and hooking, and you see this in Hollywood. So to focus human attention. You can do something like you can ask a question subconsciously that the human mind wants answered. You know, I had this dog, and then I just go on, and then you're sitting there asking yourself, wait, he has a dog. What about the dog? Why did he mention the dog?
Right.
That grabs the attention. So then once you have the attention, step 2, you want to enhance awareness of that attention by an immediate experience. What you do is you shake a person. Sometimes if you watch a stage hypnotist, they'll startle a person. You want
Like
to,
Kreskin.
yes, you want to startle a person and kind of throw them off balance a little bit. And it's going to be in that moment of chaos where you slip in a new normal when the mind is reaching out for rational meaning. So once you are, wait, what did he say? Hold up, what did he just say? It's in that moment where I slip in a new mythology, a new story, what I want you to believe. So those are the first 2 steps. Step 3, lead the subject into accepting the experience. And this has to be done with some form of subconscious consent. A person who doesn't want to be hypnotized can't be hypnotized. And so that is the moment.
I've heard that, although my mother was a hypnotist, and I remember when she was hypnotizing my Aunt Edna, and then like 2 weeks later, she got a free trip from Aunt Edna to Europe. I said to myself, I said, I can't be hypnotized. Well, that was a lie. That was an actual phrase that they give you to tell you, to make you believe that you can't be hypnotized after you've been hypnotized 1,000 times.
Perhaps you're right. And that would be a perfect tactic. I can't say that's not possible. So it very much is. Step 3 is when you merge into the storyline. That's when you step into the mythology of the book, of the movie, of the song. In this case, the way that this was presented, the way that the example was made, was with the book The Catcher in the Rye. Right. In that book, there's a lot, and that's where your neuro-linguistic programming comes in.
Has anyone read that book? Joan, have you read it?
You know, I haven't, but I think the reason you're not going to find too many, it was banned a lot.
Yeah.
Have you read it, Yessica?
No.
Because here's why. Because the main character, Holden, is sitting there sexualizing his kid's sister, but he's doing it with neuro-linguistic programming. So he's using innuendo, and anyone with the brain would be able to tell that that's what's going on here. But what he'll do...
That's Winona Ryder's favorite book.
What they'll do is they'll give you an oh crap moment. So he'll say something about, in this case, it's homosexuality. So there's this part in the book where this guy gets out of the shower, and the main character is sitting here using this language that's obviously homoerotic. This language to describe this shiny guy with his big muscles. And then he says, oh, but he's got these nasty fingernails and the blood. So what he'll do is he'll use this language that's obviously homoerotic, but then right when your mind starts to say, wait, what's going on here? He lets off the gas, per se, and he brings in something to pull down the flame, if you will, to say, oh, wait, no, that's not what that was. So, for instance, I want you guys, all 3 of you guys, I want none of you to think of a white polar bear.
Yeah, you're going to think of it for sure.
Exactly, but don't think of a white polar bear. And if you do, well, then that's your fault. And
when I think of the white polar bear, I see him drinking a Coke.
Yeah, and so there was this example made, and the narrator of the podcast does this so much better, and I'm trying to kind of cap this in, but it's this idea that let me do this thing and then tell you I'm not doing this thing. No, I'm not doing this.
That's gaslighting, like at its best, man.
Yeah.
And so that right there is leading the subject into the experience. So once you do that, once you have them into that experience, you can gaslight them. You can introduce the goal and then reinforce the goal through repetition. But what you're doing is you're introducing the goal, then saying that's not what's going on. Introducing the goal, that's not what's going on. And
that is neuro-linguistic programming. It's when you introduce, you say, I'm going to pull this out for just a moment so that they can see me. So sure. You say, you wouldn't like a glass of milk, would you?
Yeah.
And you're like, what? right? Because now you've conflicted what you've orally heard and what you've visually seen presented in front of you. It's conflicting. My mother-in-law and father-in-law, I bought some dogs. I always get 2 dogs, and I told my husband at the time was Steve, and he said that his dad wanted a dog. So I said, well, why don't you give him this dog? So his dad had the dog for about 2 weeks. He named the dog Kitsa. The dog Kitsa came back to me. He had broken a puppy in a matter of 2 weeks. Every time for the rest of that puppy's life, someone came to the door, the puppy heard the doorbell ring, rolled over, and peed itself.
Oh.
How can you break a puppy? How do you break a human being? How do you break a baby?
Well, in this case with The Catcher in the Rye, what's happening is he consistently mentions what he calls phonies. Now, today, this is the incel, quote unquote, the incel school shooter Mark 1 is The Catcher in the Rye. What happens is he's saying all these other people out here are fake. I can't stand how fake all these people are. At the same time, step 4 here, introducing the goal, it says he's a terrific liar, normalizing the behavior. He's calling everyone else fake. Meanwhile, he's fake himself.
Yes.
That's the introduction of the goal. And it's reinforced through the themes in the book of sex, murder, secrecy, deception, circularly reinforced through that on, off, and what's known as a chiasmic structure, which I'm not going to get into that. That's kind of a game of words where the words kind of trip you up. So you're kind of trying to figure out what the words mean, and you don't notice all of this stuff going on in the background. Let me say this, and unfortunately, I do have to say J.D. Salinger, who wrote The Catcher in the Rye, had worked in, I can't remember what that branch of, he was involved in World War II, and he was in the psychological affairs, psychological warfare. J.D. Salinger, who wrote The Catcher in the Rye.
Oh, wow. So he was basically writing what he learned.
Yes, and I think part of it was him himself. But I have to give him credit because the way he put this together, this neuro-linguistic programming, was very masterful. It is it's put together so well. You can, for instance, people read the book and there's so many assassination attempts linked to this book and nobody could figure out why. And this is why, because they take sexuality in the book. Holden is basically the character's name is Holden, and we'll get into that little interesting tidbit after I get done with this. So he is homoerotically describing men, and he keeps failing every time he goes to try and get with a woman. So he'll fall on his face with women, and he's homoerotically describing men. By the way, I'm not doing that. He's saying, he's got these big buff shoulders and he's got this real shimmery skin, but I'm not gay. Right. He's saying that in softer words without saying it. And what's happening is there's this rage. And that's why if you go back to movies from the 90s, you'll always see some reference to a hunting hat with rage. They have this hunting hat on, and it's connected with rage, this inner rage. And so Armageddon programming is founded on inner rage. There's something in predominantly men, but I believe it would be with any gender, called the sodomy rage. The sodomy rage is this you get mad that you were victimized through literal sodomy. Yes. If you were raped as a child.
Which is what they do to the children to induct them into MK Ultra.
Yes, but
that's coming out in spades in the Diddy trial. That was so common.
That's why I had the oil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no other reason somebody would need that much oil. That proves that what we're saying is happening was happening to some degree. But I posit that the sodomy rage can also be metaphorical. For instance, if life repeatedly screws me up the backside, if everything I do, I get fired from my job. I lose my house. My family. I'm just taking it up the back from life itself. And that's what they're doing to these young men. They're deliberately making it so that if you're white, you can't get a job because they only want DEI. If you're a
Right.
man, you're sexist. You're a piece of crap because you're a man. They are doing everything possible to make
Especially if you're a white man.
exactly and 100%. That's what they're doing. They're taking all of these predominantly males and they're giving it to them up the backside. And they're building this inner rage. There's an old saying, a man not accepted by the village will burn it down just to feel the warmth.
Wow.
And that is what Armageddon programming is resting on. What they're doing is go ahead. You're going to say something.
I was going to say, one of the things that came into my mind is how many people, it was dangerous in certain areas to wear the red MAGA hat.
Yes.
You literally.
It still is.
It still is here. You don't do it.
Yes. And so the idea is that everything that can be done to drive people apart is. So we had Joe Biden for 4 years. He came in and he did, for instance, taking Easter and making it Easter Transgender Day of Visibility. Just stupid stuff like that to piss off the other side. And now I have to be fair. Trump has come in and some of the news articles, some of the things that are being done, sometimes he'll tease the left. And what it's doing is the same thing. It's pissing off the left and it's inflaming them just as much. And they're doing this to both sides so that this side is enraged and ready to fight.
Yes.
And this side is enraged and ready to fight. And so that is the hypnosis. The hypnosis is that the news article that says something stupid comes out. Oh, this is stupid. And we're going to get mad. We're going to get mad. And it's the same repetition over and over. The news article are getting stupider and stupider. And people are getting madder and madder. And if you say something I disagree with, it used to be live and let live, but now everybody's live and let die.
Right.
If you don't agree with me, I genuinely hate you.
Right.
Yeah. I'm going to go after your job.
Exactly. We're going to get your family fired. We're going to get your dog killed when we SWAT your house. We're going to get your parents' reputation ruined. And the final 3 steps, encouraging dissociation and involuntary response. So there was a note that I wanted to read on that. Let's see. Yeah, so it's the normalization, encouraging dissociation and voluntary response to the goal. It's the fact that if these news articles keep coming out and if society keeps being crazy and upside down and we keep saying that good is bad and bad is good, then eventually you will dissociate and involuntarily believe that. It becomes something that can be triggered and it becomes triggered by the other side. In this case of Armageddon programming, the trigger is the other side in every case. Every time the rage will be triggered by the hatred of the other side. Even if it's real, even if it's fake, even if the story's real, even if the story's fake. Because what I have found is that if you actually sit down to talk to the vast majority of gay people, the vast majority of trans people, LGBTQ people, most of them are vastly normal people.
Yes,
who
they
just
are.
want to be left alone, who don't want any part of this, who don't want kids to be to have this done to kids.
Exactly.
And what the news has done is they've taken 10% of crazies and made them look like 90% of regular people.
Yes.
And that's the hypnosis. That's what this relies on. The final 2 steps, step 7, building anticipation and expectation. What that means is that we're bringing people closer to the edge of their seats. We're increasing the rage. We're making people angrier and angrier. The tension is building. It's like if you use a pressure cooker, you're building that pressure up and the thing's going to explode soon. So the deeper the subject's attention, the more likely the hypnotist will gain the expectation assigned to the anticipation. I'll read that again because that's a little bit of a tongue twister. My mouth's dry. The deeper the subject's attention, the more you're paying attention. So the more you're reading these headlines, the more you're being surrounded with all of this BS politics. Let's just use politics. The more politics is being surrounded around you, the deeper you're paying attention to this. So the more I'm focusing on Trump, the more I'm focusing on Democrats, the more likely that the hypnotist will gain the expectation, the more likely that what you've been programmed to do is going to happen, is what that's saying. And the last step is simple, and it's the same all the time. You accept your success and you use it for reinforcement the next time around. So this feeds itself and it circularly reasons itself.
You know, an interesting thing happened when you're talking about that, when we were going through the J6ers, and then I was comparing that to the mostly peaceful demonstrations that we had footage of. And what I actually saw was in the beginning, the rallies looked very similar. One was for one side and one was for the other side. And it really was on both sides, mostly peaceful. When it got violent, it was the same dress code, the same bad actors, and they came in on the Democratic side, and then they came in on the Republican side. Exactly. But the news made a big deal about the Democrats being mostly peaceful and the Republicans being insurrectionists. So it was repeated enough and enough that there is still a huge division there that is not seemingly coming together. And both the Democrats not the Democrat politicians, not the Republican politicians, but the general public has been deceived, and they've been programmed.
Yeah, so look at both political campaigns, the Harris campaign and the Trump campaign. I personally, my view is both sides are guilty of deceiving the public and of using their power for probably themselves first and the public second. So I put blame on equally both sides. They've both used these same tactics of reinforcing goals, of repetition, of introducing a goal, and the news media has helped them. So let's say Donald Trump says something. The news media panics and they say that he meant something he didn't mean. They take what Trump said out of context. And then they start up these people getting angry over it. That's the programming. And then every time Trump would speak, they would do the same thing. Every time Trump would speak, they would take it out of context. They would inflame people. Trump would say something, they would take it out of context, inflame people. Inflame. They do it on the left. They do it on the right. And what I'm noticing is that the left and the right have mirror scripts. So the script that the left is fed, the opposite is fed to the right. But it's the same idea. They're just flipping the roles around.
So when you're doing this, a lot of times when we're looking at this type of a thing, underneath it all where you can't see, you'll have one set of agendas, which may be, let's say, I'm the Italian mafia. I'm okay with shooting my enemies, and I'm okay with robbing people, and I'm okay with the money laundering and all that. But I draw the line when it comes to kids. Now that here comes this other faction that's also doing bad, and I'm gonna war with them and make them bad, and it's going to make me look like a savior.
Right.
Exactly. Yes.
So I think some of that, and I think this is something that we all have to keep in mind is that, sometimes we are choosing the lesser of two evils, but we're still getting evils.
Exactly. And that's why I say both sides are guilty of fundamentally the same thing. I mean, one side might be better in some ways here, and the other side might have it right here. But both sides have to play this game. They don't have a choice, because that's what politics is. Politics is inherently satanic, in my opinion. It is a satanic game for money, power, and now it's all rooted on secrecy. And that was an old, it's not new at all. But this whole thing is just a disgusting swamp, as Donald Trump called it. And unfortunately now I do think that Trump has been forced to play by the rules of the swamp a little bit, even if he doesn't want to. I think he's been forced to play by those rules. But back to Armageddon programming. These are the scholars. The first two, Herbert Marcuse and Theodor Adorno, came out of the Frankfurt School in Germany, which is the communist haven. And you see, these two guys, their students are the ones that are at the top of these movements today, the LGBTQ movements. Their students are the ones running it. I should have brought the names so I could present those, but I didn't have enough time to find them. But if you go and you look up Herbert Marcuse and Theodor Adorno, look on their Wikipedia page, you're going to see he was the professor of this figure, who was at the head of this movement. These people's students have taken their ideology and they have continued it into the extreme. And so, first, Herbert Marcuse, the divider, his goal was to divide people. His theory, Marcuse's critical theory, these two are critical theorists, communists, and concepts like repressive tolerance and the fusion of eros and liberation, critique capitalist society, traditional morality, and authority as inherently oppressive. He advocates for radical upheaval and sexual freedom to dismantle these structures. So he's saying that basically any type of capitalism, morality, that's the most important one, morality is oppressive. And so essentially, let's say gender roles, traditional male and female gender roles, those are oppressive. That's Marcuse's theory. How does that apply to societal decay? Marcuse accelerates decay by dividing society into irreconcilable factions. That's the important part, irreconcilable factions. That destruction by dialectic. You are for abortion, I'm against abortion. We can't find common ground because then they wouldn't be able to politicize that issue. They don't want to solve the issue. They want to make it so that this side hates the other side over that issue. Because whatever the government pays for, it gets. If the government came to any one of us and paid us $50,000 to do something, you can bet that they would extract every cent of that $50,000 out of us. They would ruin our lives until we've given them what they paid us to do. So if they wanted these issues fixed, the government always gets what it pays for. They could fix these issues if they really wanted to. They don't want to because they divide people and they make it easy to win elections. You notice how all of the past elections for like the past, 15 years have been the same issues. Gun control, abortion, economy. They tell you lies about the economy because it's only gotten worse. And these same issues that they refuse to fix.
Immigration.
Yeah.
Immigration. Yep. And so irreconcilable factions, oppressors versus oppressed. Get rid of the middle class. His rejection of family, religion, and hierarchy as repressive structures erodes the social glue that binds communities. By promoting hedonism and rebellion, he weakens collective resilience, leaving individuals atomized and purposeless. Cultural poisoning. His theories poison culture by framing it as a tool of domination, e.g. art serving the bourgeoisie, encouraging a nihilistic being incel, school shooter, nothing to live for, hopeless, rejection of shared values. This breeds a culture of resentment, entitlement, where beauty and tradition are replaced with chaos and self-indulgence. You can see that in the way we build things now. The way we used to build things, they used to have beauty to them. Now everything's gray, bland, jagged edges, and it's all just get it done fast, get it done without putting any care into it. That's nihilism. Theodore Adorno, he is the projector. He is also from the Frankfurt School. Adorno's work with the Frankfurt School, notably the culture industry and the authoritarian personality, posits that mass culture, music, film, dumb down society, while authoritarian traits stem from traditional values. He projects psychological critiques onto the collective, suggesting culture enslaves rather than uplifts. Societal decay. Adorno hastens decay by eroding trust in communal identity. His view of culture as a manipulative force turns art into a source of suspicion, not unity. By labeling tradition as authoritarian, he alienates generations, fostering a society of disconnected cynics unable to resist external control. So there's that irony poisoning that we talked about the other day.
Yes.
A culture of disconnected cynics. Culture poisoning. He poisons culture by reducing it to a conveyor belt of despair, pop songs as opiates, stories as propaganda, his projection of alienation, i.e. via The Catcher in the Rye, rage-filled, anger, everybody's fake, screw those people, infects the masses with hopelessness, replacing creativity with conformity to a bleak, controlled narrative. And then I'll read this third one, and we'll get your guys' thoughts, and then we'll go on to the last two. The third one is Edward Bernays, who was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. He used Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis theories to formulate, and his book was literally called Propaganda. So Bernays, the deceiver, his theory that he laid out in Propaganda and crystallizing public opinion, harnessed Freudian psychology to manipulate mass behavior through advertising and PR. He theorizes that the herd can be swayed by hidden desires, making deception a science for shaping perceptions. In terms of societal decay, Bernays drives decay by eroding individual agency, turning citizens into pawns of engineered consent. His manipulation of trust via ads, politics, or media fractures authentic social bonds, replacing them with shallow consumerist facades that collapse under scrutiny. So he's your master of neurolinguistic programming, Bernays is. Mm-hmm. Cultural poisoning. He poisons culture by commodifying it. Art, identity, and values become products to sell. So we're thinking consumerism here, not truth to cherish. His deceptive campaigns, like smoking is liberation, flood society with lies, drowning meaning in a sea of manufactured wants, as Ketcher's phoniness reflects. So this idea that we are what we want, you have the newest iPhone, I want the newest iPhone. That's what life's about, keeping up with the Joneses, as they used to say. So before we go on to the last two, what are your guys' thoughts on the first three?
Yessica, how about you?
Yeah, let's hear from you.
I don't know. I'm reading about right now Herbert and Theodore. So trying to see which one's the worst between the both of them.
That's a tough question. I mean, both of them have very similar ideas. Mm-hmm. They just kind of go about it slightly differently.
Scroll back down to the very last one.
Mm-hmm. Lewin and Mengele.
Right.
Oh boy!
Wow.
Would
devil?
you like? Yeah, the devil. I've called him the devil because I think
he's called the angel of death.
Well, I don't see.
His moniker.
Yeah, Mengele had a counterpart actually in Japan, and that's what leads me to believe that.
Yes, that was Hirito Ishii.
General Shiro.
Yeah.
And so I believe that these fascists were paid and funded by American bankers.
I think that Ishii worked along with Joseph Mengele.
They did.
Because, well, there's no proof of that.
Oh, wow.
But he was doing Mengele experiments, but then he came to Fort Detrick. And I think they both worked together at Fort Detrick because after the war, they invited Ishii to come and do biowarfare experiments. And I think that they were working on, this is just my personal opinion, I believe they were working on cloning. And I believe that Mengele worked for the CIA. His name, if you take the M off an angle, is Angel. Okay, that's why they call him the Angel of Death. And when I was locked up in a crazy house, there was an individual who was of Asian persuasion, but when I looked at him later on, I thought he looked like Ishii. And I was like, how would I even know what Ishii looked like? I was in a civilian hospital, and this person was in a military uniform, and he oversaw my care when I was in this hospital, and there were only 4 people in this hospital.
It's very interesting.
Extremely. So I think that there's a very strong possibility that Joseph Mengele might actually be my DNA father. And I think that what they did was Joseph Mengele married his brother's widow, Martha, after he divorced Irene. I look like Irene. And I think that, is it possible? Because he married her, I think, July 17, 1958. I was born August 11th, 1958.
Wow.
And so is it possible that he actually implanted her with children, and then they had the babies, and then they gave the babies away?
It's very possible. I have no idea. There's so much that we don't know. It is insane. I believe that the Germans and the Japanese were primarily provided with these funds for this research.
Yes, they were paid by the Rothschilds, funded Joseph Mengele and Hitler.
And the
Rothschilds were eugenicists before the war.
And the American bankers like Prescott Bush.
Yes.
All these, I believe the primary thing they were after was this research. And that's why they allowed the camps to go on, and why they allowed General Shiro to do what he was doing was because they wanted this research. Because before Mengele, MK Ultra was more akin to animal husbandry, so like taming a horse. But after Mengele came along and applied a scientific approach to it, it became very formulaic. He figured out how long you could push someone before they died. So they used that to push people to their extreme in terms of trauma, and use that to program people. Kurt Lewin, I think I will just glaze over Kurt Lewin because he simply manufactured this idea of group dynamics. I can use groups to accomplish things. So you pair these first 3 with communist theory, basically any type of traditionalism is evil. Pair that with propaganda, and then add that to groups. What they do is they can use computer programs and AI to dispatch psyops, and I'm referencing the Shadowgate documentary. Have you guys seen that by Millie Weaver?
Yes.
Yes. I can't recall everything that was in it, but yes.
So they have computer software that can say, dispatch a psyop, a campaign on this city, and then another one on this city. And with AI in the picture, it can tailor make these psyops to that demographic. So what they do is they take,
like Chad in Oregon.
Exactly. So they take this communist theory, they propagandize it, they make it into something that I should want. Oops, Siri went off on me. They make it into something that I should want as a consumer, and then they use it and sell it to a group, and that group then goes out, and miraculously there are pallets of bricks waiting for them to riot and destroy society. But it's all based on propaganda and communist theory. And it's been sold to them through propaganda, through the news, through fake news stories, through social media, through, like we were talking about the other day, bots that will just come into your comment section and say things to piss people off and to get people angry and fighting. That's another, that's so subtle, but it's a big part of it, is that if you are constantly fighting with people and people are being argumentative and confrontational, that puts you on the edge. And that's what they're after. And the final nail in the coffin is Joseph Mengele, because of his work in trauma-based mind control. Because at the end of the day, this is all based on some type of traumatic view on reality. You know, war is coming. World War III is coming. How many times have we seen in the news, I don't know, listen, even I'll even say Alex Jones, for instance. Like, there was a period of time where, like, he did 2 months long of World War III is here, World War III is here streams. It is this idea that something imminent's coming, something imminent's coming. You no longer have nothing to live for, and you hate everyone around you.
There's an individual I was looking for all the time that you were talking, and I knew this last name was Bush, but I couldn't find him. His name is Vannevar Bush. Do you know who he is?
I do not.
Okay, you might want to research him, because I always forget his name. But
how do you spell it?
Vannevar Bush. He was appointed to the National Advisory Committee. They don't name him. They name Donovan, Wild Bill Donovan. They don't name this guy anywhere. This guy is freaking prolific. He was appointed to the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, which is the NACA, the precursor to the NSA. He was chairman of the National Defense Research Committee, the NDRC, and coordinated over 6,000 leading scientists. Additionally, during the Roswell incident, he was given complete autonomy to guide the military and scientific community. No such authority has ever been given to non-military personnel in the history of our country. The outcome of Roswell was the CIA, the formation of the National Security Act, hence the National Security Agency, and the NACA already in place, which became NASA 10 years later. All agencies created to ensure that the disclosure of the alien presence would be kept secret for eternity. This is something that I wrote in one of my first chapters. I couldn't find this guy's name. I've been looking the entire time you've been talking for it. So now I have it marked somewhere so that I can research this guy. But Joan is just going, what? Right?
So that's very interesting, and I will look more into that, and I'll let you know what I find on that. In terms of this fear-based programming, I think basically the only way I could present that is just look at the way that 9/11, a traumatic event like that, was used to sow this fear.
Yes.
And how that fear was used to sell.
And the Patriot Act, I think Tulsi Gabbard or one of those individuals was trying to renegotiate that and get it removed.
I hope to God they get rid of the Patriot Act, but I don't know if they ever will. I'll believe it when I see it. I would love that, because the Patriot Act is probably one of the worst things that ever happened.
Yes, it is.
And they sell all that data. That's what Shadowgate says. So they take all this data from us, but before it hits the government server, this is key now, before that data hits the government server,
Massey and Gabbard team up on a bill to repeal the Patriot Act.
That would be great. Let's see if they can get it done.
You know, when you're going over this, though, because a lot of people have covered the plan, the playbook for what we're going through right now.
Yeah.
And the last piece is the big scare event, whether that's going to be World War III or the alien invasion. Or
so I think that.
And I'm going to take this down for now, because I want us to talk about this, because we have about like 20 more minutes.
Donald Trump has been sold to the world and to America primarily as a savior figure. He is the one who can make America great again. And I think that over these last 10 years, the fact that they have made Donald Trump this polarizing figure, everybody loves him, everybody hates him. And so everybody is invested in him. They either literally, like everyone in my family, either they love Trump or they spend the whole day looking at fake news about how bad he is and Trump derangement syndrome on both sides. They
Well,
either
we're watching
worship-
him make some epic changes. The individual that was supposed to be in this segment right now, his name is Skip Press, and he's doing a show called America's Golden Eon, AGE, and he's drawing the parallels from our founders of our country, our first presidents, into what is happening presently. We have never in our lifetime ever seen a president do the things that President Trump has done to our nation in regards to tearing up all the, excuse the vernacular, bullshit that the Biden administration pulled over on the people. All the things that we were told were lies, we're finding out, guess what? They weren't conspiracy theories, they were conspiratorial facts. And we're finding out that our DOJ was very weaponized. And David and I discussed this in regards to him being pulled off of YouTube, because when that happened, he said the strike happened in October, I believe, of 2019, and then Biden gets elected, right? But that DOJ was not Trump's DOJ. That DOJ was weaponized with Clinton and Obama and Comey and Brennan and Clapper. And these people have since had all of their security clearances removed because they, in my estimation, were indeed enemies to this state.
So I agree.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, I'll make this quick. I was just going to say that's all 100% factual, and a lot of it I'm here for. But one thing that I see that is significantly problematic, and it's not even to do with Trump, it's just about him. There are people on both sides. So the Trump derangement syndrome, either there are these people who literally everything bad that is happening in the world is Trump's fault.
Right, exactly.
But on the other end, and this is important, and this is what startles me, there are people who refuse to give any fair, listen, I have a problem with the fact that there's so much being poured into Israel. That's fair criticism.
Yes,
whatever.
I do too.
And Trump is a politician. There are things.
He's a businessman. He's not a politician.
Well,
he is a businessman.
He's had to become one because this is his second term and he's been in the swamp for a long time.
That's right. But he started as a businessman and he's running America as a business, as it should. That's why he's saying America first, because he's running it as a business and he's taking back America for Americans. We've had so many things stolen from us. And the primary thing that we've had stolen from us is the truth. Now, do I think Trump is a savior? No. My personal savior is Jesus Christ.
The fact is,
not a man.
I think that some people can't, they've lost all ability and they are following him like a messianic figure. That's what I'm saying.
That's right. That's wrong too. Okay.
And I think that
he is a man. He is a man that is put there. And I believe that actually when he was shot in the ear, and I as I told you earlier in this podcast, I saw that.
Yeah.
Okay. I believe that there was another individual, I think his name was Biggs. He's bills himself as a prophet. I don't call myself a prophet. I talk to God. He tells me crap and I tell it to other people. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
That's all of us. We should all be that way. But this individual actually saw him months before get shot in the ear. He said he saw him fall to his knees, and actually he then knew what his mission was, and he was very clear and sold to Jesus at that point.
I remember.
And I believe that he's trying to do his mission just as this right here. Everyone that is in this room, we have a mission and a duty and a responsibility to the truth. And that's why I started Agent X11, Hollywood Dark Journalist, because we have that mission to the truth. And that's why I started working with David Zublik, because I believe that it was actually God that guided me to him, because my brother David was murdered after writing an unpublished book entitled The Whistleblower. And the Awake Nation is a show for whistleblowers and for educators that are trying to get the truth out.
Hell yeah, absolutely.
And to that point as well, when this is how I see Trump. He was brought in as the change agent because we were bankrupt. We were going to implode.
I think we were going straight to hell, Joan.
Oh yeah, and we were going to implode like Russia did. Remember that in the 90s when?
I don't, but I wasn't here then.
Oh, well. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I mean, I know what you're referring
66.
to. Yeah, and I don't remember.
So that whole government came down.
Yeah.
We were on the verge of that. He was brought in as a change agent
I
with
agree with that.
200 generals behind him to prevent the programming, to bring us down to that, and also to reduce our population. And that was part of and destroy our culture. That's why we had the illegals coming in droves to destroy it. There's been an attack on religion. There's been
agents from those people that came in by the millions, agents of the CCP, agents of the cartel, agents of the cabal, agents of the mob. I mean, I thought we had enough homegrown mob, but apparently we didn't. And all of these agents are brought into, and terrorists are brought into the United States for the ultimate takedown of the United States. And they were voting, and they would have voted for Harris and for
Absolutely.
that agenda. So
that too.
Yes.
But
so go ahead.
Oh, back to Trump. When you're a change agent, there's a lot, you're going to do a lot of good, but while you're doing it, you're going to piss off a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And so I think this is where I see Trump. I don't see him as a savior either. And he's got his own faults.
Yes, he does. He's human.
But what he is doing isn't by his own fruition. He has 200 generals behind him guiding what he's doing. And does he make mistakes? Oh, absolutely.
Yes. And I don't agree with everything he does either. And no one should. You should be able to, the whole premise is you should be able to question your governance, and you should be able to point out when they're doing something that you don't agree with, and you should be able to speak up about it. We are at 16 after the hour. We just have a couple more minutes.
Let me cap off this Armageddon programming, because I don't know where it goes from here. It could be something happening to Trump. It could be a lot of things, but here is where it culminates. And it's very clear to me, and probably to all you guys too. Everything that's happening is pushing people further apart. And it really is like a pressure cooker. And this pressure is building, and nobody is letting off the steam. So if we don't do something and it's getting harder and harder and harder by the minute to help people learn to cooperate out of unity again.
Yes.
If we don't do something, that pressure cooker is going to explode. And that is going to be, whatever that event is going to cause a lot of damage, because
I think more and more people, Josh, have come together more, because earlier you had talked about the small percentage of America that was taking over America with their pronouns and their blue hair and their nose rings and their, binary and, inclusion and DEI. That was a very small percentage of America. Yet we were forced as Americans to believe that was those were our actual values, that the small percentage was what America represented, while we were being laughed at on the global stage, where we have an individual who's a man who has breast implants standing on the White House lawn rubbing his tatas, and we're being laughed at in the global sphere.
Yeah.
So, by that token, yes, you were absolutely right. That was a minority. And I think that we have come together under Make America Great Again, but not because of Trump, but because we are embracing, the country showed we have conservative values, and that is what we want represented of us.
Yeah, those are all fair points. I think primarily one of the issues that will possibly manifest is, for instance, you're seeing birth rates decline, and now they're starting to talk about that. The thing that most people are not seeing, because it's like an invisible aspect to this, is that many people my age basically have lost all hope, and that's why that's where this all culminates. It's like,
how old are you, Josh?
I'm 25.
God, you're a baby, but you're so smart.
I appreciate that. But yeah, they're starting to lose hope. And I think it would only because everyone's being driven to the edge of their seats. It would only
take gave
one
me hope,
event.
Josh. You just gave me hope for the future of America, because I am a singer, and I sang for Giorgio Moroder and Paul Schaefer for when I auditioned for Barbie Rocker. Don't judge, okay?
I don't care.
And for Universal Studios.
You're fine.
And the song that I sang was a Whitney Houston song. It's called The Greatest Love of All. And it begins, I believe that children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. And you are our children, and you, Josh, are our future. And you give me, a 66-year-old, hope and faith for our future. And I want
I
to thank
appreciate
you
that.
so very much
Thank
for ever coming and saying hello to me. And I think you're
No.
going to be on our shows for some time to come. We have just a few minutes before we close out. What are your final thoughts, Josh? What would you like our audience to know?
You know what? I will follow what you said. I think ultimately, we're presented with a choice. That's why I believe it was Benjamin Franklin said, "Here is your democracy if you can keep it." And the way we keep it is by coming together out of love. And Jesus is the truth. Jesus is the light, and Jesus is the power of love. You know that old song, "The Power of
Yes.
Love." And so we have to come together, because the answer is never putting this person is going to save us, that person is going to save us. We have to save ourselves, and we do that through the power of love and through coming together and saying, live and let live. You know I might disagree with you, but if I disagree with you, let's just still have mutual respect for each other, and let's have respect for the fact that we both are living for our own unity, our own truth as a communal group, as a country, as a nation. That's what it's about. It's not about we can't let ourselves fall for the trick of division. We can't let ourselves hate other people, because that is the great trick. The trick is that you and I are not equal. It's like
we are all equal.
Yeah, it's
that's
like
what that was the deception you also talked about with Satan, is making people believe that he never existed. But the reality is, it is chaos, mayhem, murder. That is the satanic agenda. That is Satan's agenda. Satan's agenda is division. Jesus' agenda is to come together in love and in peace.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. But at the end of the day, I look at it. When I read those verses, I actually look at it as an objective, almost like an equation. When Jesus says, "I am the truth," literally, he is the truth. Like that's if you follow the truth, if you follow love and light, you're following Jesus.
Yes.
And so that's what it's about. And it's about, and everybody makes mistakes. That's why he's came and died for us, so that our mistakes can be forgiven. But you have to ask for forgiveness. At the end, when you have to plead your case to go into heaven, because I believe you'll be asked, "Who are you?" at the end, and you'll be asked, "Who are you?" And if you say, "I'm just a flawed human who has made mistakes and who needs forgiveness," I believe that is what the blood of Jesus is paid for. Is that?
Yeah, but I also know that there will be many that come to him that did signs and wonders in his name that never knew him, and he will say that, "Who are you?"
And
I never knew you.
And they will sit and they will talk for 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12 hours, and they'll tell you about all those signs and wonders, but they'll never once say that they were a human who needs forgiveness. I don't believe they'll say all about their signs and wonders, and they'll never once ask or say that they were flawed, and so Jesus never knew
many
them.
actually believe in Jesus. They know that he was a real person, but they don't actually believe in Jesus. Joan Rene, I want to thank you for being with us. Some closing thoughts, and then we'll ask where everybody can be found.
Well, listening to you, you're absolutely right. Love is the answer. But if you ask people what love is, most people cannot define it. And so that's the stigma. That's the problem. And, love isn't just the butterflies in your stomach. It's a choice. And sometimes it's a very hard choice to love somebody that isn't lovable.
To be completely honest with another person is what I've heard love is.
Yes. Joan Rene, where can people find you?
You can find me here on Agent X11. You can find me on Trauma Triage on the David Zubik channel. And you can find me on X on Joan Rene 27.
And Yessica Garza, where can people find you?
You can find me on X at Yessica OG111. On Mondays at Trauma Triage, and on Fridays on Agent X11.
Excellent. And Josh, thank you so very much for coming in the last minute.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what our evening show is going to be. I don't know if Skip is going to get his internet up. So stay in touch with me. And where can people find you?
So the best place to find me is bio.link/officialurban. It's bio.link/officialurban. My Substack, where I write and where I publish my content, that is theofficialurban.substack.com. I'll say that one more time. bio.link/officialurban. That's all my links. Everything is there.
Can people contribute to you to help you with your research? How do they do that?
Literally, okay, so if you go to my bio.link, that's the link that I always share, because if you have that link, you can find everything about it. You can find all of my socials, all of my social medias. So if anybody wants to contribute, bio.link/officialurban, you could go to one of my many social media platforms, get in contact with me. It's not too hard to contact me, and just say, hey, I want to contribute. I got this idea. Do you mind if I write it? Do you mind if you put it up? And as long as you've got something behind it, I don't care. I'll help you, give you a platform. That's what my whole thing's about, is I want to bring in as many people and get as many different viewpoints as I can.
Yes, I just want to thank you. I think you are wise beyond your years. You're very smart. You're very well researched. It's been my pleasure to meet you and to engage with you and to have you on the show. And I know that we're going to have you on many more shows. You're an extraordinary individual, and I think you're going to help many, many, many people.
I appreciate that. I just want to say I apologize to Joan and to Yessica, because you guys didn't get to say too much.
That's all right.
I was over here rattling, and I didn't mean to do that. I wanted to get as much in as
we did it. You know,
possible.
when I did my first shows with David Zublik, I was preparing for Hollywood Dark Journalist, Hollywood Fridays, and I used to talk really, really fast to try and get in all the stuff from my PowerPoint. And David's like, hey, you're going to be back next week. All right.
I'm going to try and be a little bit more. If I am back on tonight, I'm going to lay off a little bit, because I know that today was this topic that I had brought forward. And it kind of was something that I was presenting out of my own research. I know later will be more of somebody else's or a different topic. So I will try to kind of tone it back and just offer
no
my
worries.
little,
You did an excellent job. We are almost out of time. We have just like 2 minutes to go. And I want to thank everyone for watching Agent X11 Hollywood Dark Journalist. You can find me on X at Shepherd Out. We do this thing. I know you'll catch on to it, Josh. You can find me at Shepherd Out on X. You can also find me at shepherd-entertainment.com. Please join us on the Awake Nation Monday through Friday, and that is 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. We are live. Go to the David Zublik channel, and you can find us because we're going to post there. We are out of time, so we are out of here. Shepherd out.
Rene out.
Josh out.
Garza out.
Goodbye for today from Agent X11 Hollywood Dark Journalist. We post new episodes daily. Check out our true crime episodes Wednesdays and Fridays. Please watch our main show, David Zubik's Awake Nation, on the David Zubik channel on Rumble. We are live Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern.